Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Open Science First Fridays. These sessions are a space for us as GYA members, along with colleagues and friends, to come up together and explore different aspects of open science. I'm very happy to introduce here Dr. Catherine Corker. She's the executive director of ASAPbio, which is a nonprofit that works to improve transparency and rigor in how life sciences research is communicated. She also has a strong background as a researcher herself, and she's been very active in pushing for open science and trustworthy scientific practices. Today's topic is especially relevant for us in the GYA because it connects directly with the challenges we often face in publishing, doing the peer review, and research assessment. The published review curate model that she will be presenting offers a different way of thinking about how we share and evaluate research. And it has direct implications for our own careers as early career researchers. So with that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Catherine Corker.
Thank you. Thank you, Oscar. That's very warm welcome. I'm glad to be here. Let me just get my slides up. All right. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I am here to talk today about what is wrong with research publishing and how we can fix it and make it better and make lives better for researchers and also for the community in general. I suspect, even as your careers are just getting going, you are already encountering the frustrations with the traditional research publishing system. So I don't need to belabor them, but we know that the system is very slow. It takes a long time to publish research. Um, in the meantime, other researchers in the traditional system don't have access to ongoing work. The system is often paywalled, so access is a huge problem. Even in well-resourced areas, it's increasingly difficult to get access to all of the scientific literature that people need. So journals use paywalls as a way to pay their bills, but it means that access to that research is restricted. There are also quality issues with the traditional research. So peer review is meant to ensure a certain standard of quality of research that's published in journals, but it is by no means foolproof. In fact, there are many downsides to the traditional way that peer review is done. That means that research is not to a level of quality or rigor that we might like or assume. And finally, there are plenty of equity issues with the current research publishing system. It's not a fair system for researchers globally, and it is important that we tackle those issues so that we can bring in the full breadth of global talent to important scientific problems. So at ASAPbio, we're advocating for a better way forward with preprints and open evaluation. Preprints, as you might know, are a low cost and simple way to improve publishing. They're much faster than traditional publishing. You can publish a preprint in a couple of days, not months or years. It's done at the control of the researcher rather than at the control of an editor or a particular journal. They are open, so they are free to post and free to read. And that means that everyone gets access to the information as it's coming out. They're a more fair solution. They're globally accessible and open to all. It sort of levels the playing field and addresses some of those equity issues with the traditional publishing system. And finally, I will argue that preprints can be rigorous. And one of the ways that we can add that rigor to the process is by layering transparent evaluation on top of open preprint publishing. And so I think when preprints were first beginning to take hold, a major critique of them was that they were somehow less rigorous because they haven't necessarily been through a peer review process. But I will argue that, in fact, actually the opposite is true. Preprints can be more rigorous than the traditional system. So what are preprints? I'm going to just simply define them as an author version of a paper. You'll notice that I don't define them as being not peer-reviewed because that's often not the case. There's often lots of peer evaluation that goes on um, around a preprint before it's posted. That peer evaluation might have taken place within the confines of a journal, or it might have taken place in other forms. So documents that are posted on preprint servers have all different statuses in terms of whether or not they've been vetted by other scientists. But we'll call them author versions of a paper. They're shared publicly on a preprint server. And because of that open public sharing, they are permanent. They receive DOI, just like a journal article. They're indexed. That means that they're findable in places like Google Scholar. And they're versionable. So you can take your preprint and make changes to it over time as the work develops. Preprints are very popular. So this is a figure showing the growth in preprints. Each bar represents monthly submissions to life science preprint servers. There's over, at the time that we made this graph, now there are already more, over 700,000 life science preprints and millions more in other disciplines and other repositories. Within our area of focus for ASAPbio, the life sciences, the biggest preprint servers are bioRxiv, Research Square, preprints.org, medRxiv, and further down the list, scIarchive, Authoria, and SSRN. So you can see, each month there's somewhere around 12 to 15,000 preprints published. It's quite a high volume. There's also many, many choices that you have when it comes to publishing your preprint. So there are over 50 preprint servers that have some scope within the life sciences. Not all of these preprint services are exclusively focused on the life sciences, but all of them touch the life sciences in some way. So plenty of choices with both different regional focus and different disciplinary focus for you to choose from when it comes time to submit a preprint. So I wanted to address some common FAQs for preprints, and then I'm hoping also that there will be plenty of time for questions at the end. So even though we're a small group today, I hope to address any lingering questions that you have about the system. I also wanted to say I'm going to talk a bit about preprints for now, and then I'm going to move into talking about open evaluation, and then finally the publish, review, curate model. So we can stop at any time if there are questions. Feel free to interrupt. But I wanted to get some of these frequently asked questions out of the way, and then we can see if there are more questions still. So one major question, of course, is are preprints compatible with journal publishing? The answer is a resounding yes. Nearly all journals, especially in the life sciences, are open to researchers sharing preprints alongside with publishing in a particular journal. So you don't need to worry that posting a preprint will prevent you from publishing your work in a particular journal. You can combine the best of both worlds if you like, in that you can post a preprint early, get the benefits of that early sharing and feedback, and then later on, if you like, you can publish your paper in a journal and receive the peer review, stamp of approval, all of those things that you need for your career. We have a big directory on our website. I will also say at the end of the slides, I have links to all of these things, and we'll share the slides with everyone so that you have links to all of these different resources. But we have a big list of all of those 50 plus preprint servers where you can go and you can see the policies of the different servers. We also have some information about those journal policies that you can consult to help feel more comfortable that preprints are compatible with your journal of choice. Okay, second FAQ, when are preprints typically shared? I like to advocate for sharing them as early as you feel like you have a complete or sort of shareable product. As soon as you maybe would feel comfortable presenting it at a conference, I think is probably about the right time that you could begin to get feedback on a preprint. We have some data that shows that researchers are often doing this, around or maybe slightly before submitting their paper to a journal. You can get some of the benefits of getting that peer feedback on your publicly posted preprint if you do it a couple of weeks before you submit to a journal, so you can ingest that feedback, improve the paper, and then send it on for peer review. Um, but a lot of people just do it at the same time that they are submitting to a journal. Um, but as I mentioned before, preprints are able to be versioned, and so that means that you really have a lot of options in terms of submitting, particular um, at a particular stage of your research project, and then later updating as new additional pieces get added. There's also some areas of the research community that share their work in multiple stages. So you might share a protocol for your project, and then later the protocol is then connected to maybe a subsequent preprint or another project that has the results that came out of that protocol. Um, Okay, another big question that always comes up, do I need to worry about scooping? So scooping is this idea that you're going to post your research and someone is going to see that you have posted it and somehow beat you to the punch. Um, we think actually that preprinting makes your work more scoop proof than scoopable. Preprints can be evidence of a priority claim, so it means that you are the one that is first published on a topic by posting your preprint the first. And so it's actually sort of the opposite. If you choose to submit your work to a journal and don't preprint it, and then it sits there for many, many months, in the meantime, someone else could scoop you in the sense, or publish first on a topic while you're waiting in that long peer review queue. So we think that preprints actually provide some protection against scooping rather than the opposite. What are the main benefits of preprinting? In addition to getting your work out there faster, you have the opportunity to get feedback from peers. There's the opportunity to potentially establish collaborations with others who are working in a similar area and who might see the work and become interested in it sooner than they otherwise might. Get additional publicity. There's some evidence that works that are submitted as preprints have higher citation rates down the line than works that are not preprinted. Um, Many, many upsides of preprints, and I think very few downsides. Although if you have questions about potential downsides or things that you're worried about, I'd be happy to answer questions about those and see if we can troubleshoot what some of those roadblocks might be. How should I choose a preprint server? With 50 plus choices, I can imagine that it might be a little bit daunting. One thing to do is to look and to see what others in your community are doing and choose a similar venue to where papers that you want to read are being published. In the life sciences, Bio and Med Archive are kind of the main premier outlets that a lot of people are posting to. I like those outlets in particular because they are nonprofit, community led. They have, strong governance and just good procedures overall that make for a nice, friendly experience as an author. Um, but you can, consult our list of preprint servers and see the many different options that are available and pick one that sort of suits you and your particular community. Like I said, there's lots of different choices that um, that fit different circumstances and needs. All right, I will pause briefly and awkwardly to see if there are other questions before I go on to the next section. I'm not monitoring the chat, so Oscar, you have to tell me if anything shows up in the chat.
Yeah, not any questions as of now from the
Okay.
chat. But on the topic of preprints, uh, yeah, you mentioned that there is actually a protection of your work, but for example, in this global south,
Hmm.
there's usually a big gap between when you are ready to publish and when you
Hmm.
actually publish, because depending on on the resources available,
Hmm.
sometimes you need to have your final piece for the actual the paper to actually be rounded. That
Hmm.
sometimes people share their finished work or pre-finished, and when a reviewer asks them for the next the next step, sometimes it could take more than a year to get that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people are worried about if they publish it as a preprint, some other lab with more resources
Yep.
can complete that research way faster than they would because of the lack of resources.
Yeah, yeah, I completely understand that. I mean, we've heard that feedback before. So I definitely understand that concern. I mean, I think if we were existing in a vacuum where career concerns were not a concern, right? Of course, you would just publish as soon as you were ready. Like if it's ready to submit to a journal, then clearly it's ready to share. And then you would version it and you would add that additional experiment later and so on. But of course, we don't live in a world where the career concerns are not a concern. So I do understand that. I also maybe just like one slight word of dissent against that type of logic. All of us think our research is really, really, interesting and the most fascinating and cutting edge stuff. But everyone else thinks that about the thing that they're doing as well. And so there's some little bit of disconnect, but with this idea of scooping in that it's not as if there's someone just, this sort of imagined researcher, someone just sitting around at their bench, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for your idea to come along so they can do it because they've already got their own thing going on. They're not necessarily, worried about executing your experiment. Now, maybe that's naive, and maybe this is happening all the time to people who, are working at a slower pace. My own career trajectory was distinct, but in some ways similar in that I always worked at colleges and universities that were focused on teaching. So these are not the kinds of places where people are getting big grants and churning out studies or having like armies of graduate students or anything like that. Um, so we worked under kind of similar conditions where it was pretty low resource environments for research. Um, and my own personal choice was just to always work at my own pace, share things as they were ready, and sort of hope for the best. And it worked out all right for me, but I recognize that's you know certainly the fear can be there about someone else being able to work faster than you can.
And in my experience with my colleagues, this has happened, and with usually people from China,
Okay,
like they
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
someone
mean,
takes their job and presents it like practically the same with more things.
yep, yep. And I mean, I think a cultural problem as well that researchers are often so concerned with who's first, I guess. And that's, again, if we didn't live in a world where we were just um, where we had career concerns, we'd be thinking, wow, okay, the field has advanced. Someone else did the experiment. Now we have the answer. Great, no problem. But yeah, of course, people and science don't work that way. All right. Well, I'll go on, I think, to the next section, which is about open evaluation. So what is open evaluation for the purposes of this talk? It's a review of a paper or other output. So up to this point, I've been mostly focusing on preprints and articles as kind of the final output of research. But of course, there's a lot more that goes into a research project besides preprints. Every project has, or every, well, yeah, every quantitative and qualitative project has some kind of data or some kind of evidence on which it's based. So that data, the research materials, perhaps the analysis code, all of those other outputs can also be openly evaluated, not just the papers. And those other outputs are, in some ways, perhaps even more important than the paper themselves. So open evaluation can be of papers or of those other outputs. Um, those outputs can be shared in repositories or on preprint review service. And likewise, in an ideal world, those are also permanent. The reviews are permanent. They have DOIs attached to them. They can be indexed and they can be linked using metadata to the reviewed object. We can contrast this open evaluation with what typically goes on at journals, which is, for the most part, a black box. We don't necessarily see what's going on inside the peer review that's happening at journals. Some journals, and an increasing number of journals, I should say, do what's called open or transparent peer review, which means that after they've decided to accept something, they will publish the peer reviews alongside it. And so in that way, you get some access to the evaluation that's happened for that research object. But the timing is divorced. The community doesn't benefit from those reviews until much further down the line. And it's also censored. We don't see the reviews for the papers or other outputs that are rejected or not considered by a journal. So we only see the reviews for the positive results. In an open evaluation system, on the other hand, anything that's reviewed gets a review, and that review is there alongside the object for the duration. And so there's some benefits to doing so. Actually, before I talk about the benefits, well, maybe I'll come back to this. I'm going to skip the order, I think, a little bit. I've got some information or examples of all the various ways that you can do open evaluation, but let me talk about the benefits first, and then I'll come back to that. So yeah, why do open evaluation? We can get much more timely feedback, so authors can get, near instant or very fast feedback to improve their work rather than waiting months to get it from a journal. People who are doing the reviews are demonstrating their scholarly engagement with the work. So reviews are themselves scholarship. And I guess in an ideal world, we would be treating reviews as scholarship. We would be, awarding credit and reputational credit, I should say, to people who are strong reviewers who are, providing that service and that benefit to the community. We have transparency benefits, so the strengths and weaknesses of a particular piece are uncovered for everyone to see, and that makes it so that we can all understand better the contribution of a particular piece of work. And lastly, they can help us increase efficiency. So there's some avoidance of the rinse and repeat cycle that we tend to get with journal resubmissions, where an author will submit a particular piece of work to a journal, gets reviewed after several months. The reviewers don't like it, gets rejected. No one sees those reviews. They take it to a new journal. The process repeats, and it's inefficient not just for the authors, but especially for the reviewers who are repeatedly reviewing the same piece over and over again. Meanwhile, no one is benefiting from those reviews or evaluations aside from the author team. So where can you do this type of open evaluation? The middle chunk here has examples of the many different preprint feedback initiatives that there are. And I will say that these preprint feedback initiatives take lots of different forms. Some of them are quite journal-like. So we have ones on the right-hand side here that kind of resemble either our journals themselves, like eLife, or the Peer Community Inn also has a journal, or that are minimalist and less like journal feedback on the left-hand side. So the ways that people can give preprint feedback, span the gamut from leaving comments on preprint servers, social media posts, posting on PubPeer. There's a little tool that is compatible with some preprint servers. It's called Plaudit. It's like a little thumbs up. You can just sort of thumbs up things that meet your standards. On the right-hand side, we have things like Review Commons, which is a service where you can submit your paper to Review Commons. It's reviewed via the service, and then you can pass it to one of several partner journals after it's been through the process. Peer Community Inn works in a similar way. The review is centralized, and then there are a variety of friendly journals that will accept the work after it's been through the review process. Pre-review is another one I want to talk about. Pre-review is somewhat unique in terms of how it approaches the problem of how to provide feedback. On pre-review, reviewers can provide reviews of preprints that are posted on one of several different services that they are compatible with. So it doesn't have to be initiated by an author. Anyone who wants to review a particular piece of work can do so on pre-review quite easily. It has all of those features that I mentioned before. It provides DOIs for the reviews, which are then indexed and linked to the reviewed object so that everyone can see the reviews alongside the preprint. But Preview also has the option within their system for authors to request a review. So authors can say that they're open to a particular type of feedback and solicit it from the community as well. So that one is sort of interesting because it involves both types of actors, reviewers and authors, sort of interacting with the system. So all of these, you know, these and many more preprint servers kind of form sort of the bottom layer of this system. Once the reviews or once the works are out there and posted on the preprint servers, they can be evaluated and provided feedback using these many diverse systems. And then finally at the top, there's linking and discovery. So all of the reviews, or many of the reviews, I should say, in these various systems, since they have DOIs and other infrastructure that helps them be connected to a broader system, you can find reviews sort of aggregated all together in places like Society or Europe PMC, DOI registries, right? All of this data from the reviews themselves can kind of feed back, and you can search and find the information all in an aggregated place. And so together, all of these different pieces form a kind of decentralized network, a different way of doing peer review that provides potentially more robust evaluation than the kind of evaluation that you would get through journal peer review process. Okay. So if you put together the two pieces that I have mentioned, the preprints on the one hand, sort of fast open publishing, and then later layered on top of that an open evaluation of the product. We're 2 steps of the way to a new model that's been called Publish, Review, Curate. So the idea with the Publish, Review, Curate model is that the order of traditional publishing is flipped. Works are first published and then they are reviewed. Whereas, of course, in the traditional publishing system, works are reviewed and curated by a journal before being published. So the Publish, Review, Curate model flips the order of traditional publishing. And in so doing, it combines the strengths of preprinting and open evaluation to provide a more robust publishing system than the traditional system. It's decentralized by design, so all of those different pieces that I was demonstrating here are different actors, sort of all working in some coordination, but it's not managed by a central entity, right? A traditional journal, by contrast, is kind of like a siloed, centralized entity. You submit to the journal, and once you do, your paper is sort of inside of their walled garden. Um, so we argue that the Publish, Review, Curate system could be, transformative for the publishing system overall. If it were adopted more broadly, it allows us to overcome many of those burdens that I mentioned at the beginning, right? That traditional publishing is slow, that it's unfair, all of those things. I'm not going to argue that it's a panacea and that it would solve everything, but I think it would greatly improve the circumstances over the status quo if we were to do more of this sort of thing. I'll just say a little teeny bit about curation before I go on. It's the one step we haven't talked about yet. One thing to know about this Publish, Review, Curate model is that you don't necessarily need to see it as sort of like you must do one step and then the other and then the other. It doesn't have to be sequential. But in some cases, some variants of the model, works are first published, then reviewed, and then finally they are curated, where curation can mean a whole bunch of different things. but it can mean some kind of filtering. So you take a large group of articles that are published and winnow them down to some kind of collection that is either, topical in nature or work that meets a certain quality, or it can even just be sort of like some community group's opinion of the best of X, where X is, I don't know, cancer biology or whatever topic of interest that is of interest to you. So you can think about it as, gold stars or winnowing process, or even just simple checking. It could be the curated collection is the collection of all the studies that have been done to some level of methodological rigor or some level of completeness. Many, many different things that curation could mean. Lots of possibilities here, only just beginning to be explored. Indeed, embracing a sort of community-led version of the publish, review, curate system would help us solve a lot. And I wanted to sort of talk about, some additional problems that are coming up in the traditional system that I think that this switch to a new system would help us to solve. So one is that there's an overwhelm of the traditional peer review system. There are, far more far more articles out there than there are researchers who could possibly read and evaluate all of them. And so maybe a solution is for us to review less. Maybe we're allocating our resources very inefficiently by doing this sort of rinse and repeat cycle of reviewing things over and over again. If we pooled resources and had a more centralized reviews, journal agnostic review system, that might help us deal with some of the overwhelm that we have under the traditional system. Certainly, there have been many equity problems that have been caused by the APC models that fund open access research. And if we move to a system that is funded in different ways, not through APCs, then we might be able to undo some of those inequities that have been introduced by APCs. The publishing in the publish, review, curate model is not free, but it is free to post and free to read. So individual researchers benefit from a much cheaper system. And at a systems level, it can be less expensive for groups like funders, governments, other institutions to sort of sponsor. So rather than sinking more money into expensive APCs that really just seem to line the pockets of commercial publishers, we could move to a model where publishing is funded in a different way and it is more equitable from the beginning. There's been a lot written about how things like journal impact factor and other flawed metrics are inappropriately used in researcher assessment. What if, instead of doing that, we could have instead rely on open evaluations of people's work, right? Qualitative assessment of the thing that matters, right? If I want to know if someone is a good researcher and I should hire and promote them and so on, what better way to do so than to look at how peers are evaluating the quality of their work through an evaluation process. It's a more direct way of doing assessment. Certainly, you could imagine that, other new problems would be introduced by making this switch. But at the very least, if we had more open evaluation information, that might let us avoid using things like whether an article was published in a fancier, prestigious journal. And then my last point is that the traditional publishing system is showing itself not quite able to handle new threats to academic integrity. So traditional peer review is not responding well to things like paper mills, citation rings, these sorts of things. So you could argue that the one thing that peer review is argued to do or is supposed to do, sort of protect the integrity of the research record, it is not succeeding at, or at least it's not succeeding as well as we might like. So a new PRC-based system provides a new opportunity for us to think about how we address those kinds of threats. And certainly those threats are not going to go away under either kind of system, but I think there's the potential because of the decentralized nature of the sort of structure of the publishing system that it might be better equipped to handle um, these integrity issues than the traditional system is. There's also, I think, some power in the crowd, in the community being able to sort of flag up issues much more quickly and efficiently than traditional publishers can. So when you're trying, behind your walled garden to do evaluation, in private, it's much more inefficient and expensive for you to deal with these bad actors than it is when they're out in the open and people can say, no, that's junk. Like um, we shouldn't be paying attention to this obviously fake paper mill paper. Um, okay. So I have ideas for 4 things early career researchers can do to support open science. I won't claim that any of these are, easy or simple. These are just 4 ideas for things you can do. One thing that um, I think is always the case when you are, sort of just getting started in your career is that there's always a lot of things that you can do and a lot of things that are people are telling you, and it can sometimes be kind of a fire hose of information and you think, oh, how can I possibly do all of this stuff at once? My advice on that topic is don't try to do all of it at once. Try to do baby steps. Take one thing at a time. So, maybe um, posting a preprint is relatively simple and easy and could be sort of like a nice first step. But then, as you become more comfortable with various pieces of the puzzle, you can add more complexity to your routines. But certainly don't feel like, oh, if I can't do all of this, then I shouldn't do any of it. Um, so posting openly licensed preprints is a good first step. Another thing to consider is that we love to see preprints that are complete in the sense that they are, shared with open data, open code, open materials, all kinds of other, open science activities. Just because a preprint is not published in a journal doesn't mean that it is somehow lesser than or could be less complete. If you are going to send your data, code, materials with your journal article, send them with your preprint too. Why not? Um, Third step, you can review preprints. All of those different systems that I mentioned before are accessible to, a wide range of people who might want to provide comments or feedback on a particular preprint. If you are not feeling particularly up to just, posting feedback on a preprint all on your own, there are community initiatives that you can take part in that, provide a nice entryway or nice pathway to getting used to providing this kind of feedback in the open. We have a crowd review program that runs on an annual basis that has, crowds of about 50 to 70 people that are led by a couple of, each crowd has a couple of leads. What happens in those crowds is that each month the crowd selects a paper to review. The crowd as a whole sort of descends on the paper and marks it up and provides feedback. The crowd leads consolidate the feedback and then they share the crowd's review with the original authors and then also publicly. We use pre-review to do that, but you could use other tools as well. It's a nice way to sort of get introduced to crowd reviewing. So I added the link here as a little bit of promotion since we do have our cycle right now is that we're recruiting new reviewers for next year's crowds. So if that at all sounds interesting to you, and if you are working in cell biology, microbiology, immunology, or meta research, we would love to have you in one of our 4 crowds. Pre-review also runs review clubs, so that's another opportunity you can check out. You can also review preprints within your own lab. So if you have a journal club in your lab, you can turn your journal club into a preprint review club. So rather than just discussing the article locally, you can, write up a review and send that feedback to the authors and post it publicly. The last step, I'll just say, since you're already participating in the Global Young Academy, you already know there's some benefit to working in community. And I'll just say it's, I think, helpful to have community and peer support for all of these kinds of activities. There are um, research networks. So there's the UKRN, UK Research Network, but then there are other research networks all over the world that provide open science themed communities that are specialized for your region. So you can look out for the research network that's in your area and get involved in their activities, or other, other local clubs are kind of a nice way to feel a little bit less alone adopting some of these new practices. Just a few last tips and tricks, and then we'll move to your questions and to some discussion, hopefully. One tip I can't recommend strongly enough is that you should get and use an ORCID. An ORCID is an identifier that identifies you specifically as an individual researcher. You can use it on your preprints, your articles, your any data or code that you share, and your reviews as well. All of them can be linked to your ORCID. It produces a nice record of sort of everything you've done as an individual scholar, and sort of uniquely identifies you. So it's free to get one. Really no reason not to have one. You should do it um, as soon as possible and start linking various outputs to it. Another piece of advice is we recommend that people choose CC BY licenses for their openly shared outputs, including preprints. CC BY means that when someone else wants to reuse your work, they need to do so with attribution. So that means that they'll cite you when they're making use of your work. But choosing CC BY rather than some of the other Creative Commons licenses enables reuse, greater reuse of your work. So things like if someone wants to reuse a figure from your article on Wikipedia or in an encyclopedia or a textbook, open educational resources, they can do that, easily without needing to ask for any special permission. If you choose a license like CC BY non-commercial, that's CC BY NC license, people sometimes choose that because they think, oh, I don't want a commercial company to benefit from my work, or I want them to have to ask permission. Um, if you choose the NC license, sometimes you inadvertently exclude reuse by actors that you might otherwise want to be able to have access for that reuse. So again, things like Wikipedia or open educational resources, it just puts up an additional barrier against your work being reused for those types of situations. So CC BY licenses, we have a bunch of education on our website about sort of differences between the licenses, and Creative Commons also has some really good educational materials as well. So another tip and trick is if you can, try to bring your lab along. Sometimes, depending on how enthusiastic you are about these practices, you might feel like you're the only one that's advocating for them, or others in the lab aren't as interested. But you can really sort of multiply the power of your own actions by modeling and showing others by your lead. Sort of how these practices are beneficial and how they help move science along. It's also, again, it's better to feel like you're in a community and there's a team of you that are sort of working in the same direction rather than feeling like you're by yourself. Oh, and I already mentioned the journal club for preprints is another idea. So if you're doing journal club already, might as well make it a bit more useful for the community. We have a program. We're not accepting applications right at this moment, but we might be later this year, that would let you convert your journal club to a preprint review club, provide like a small incentive that lets you, buy coffee for your group or something like that, so that you can have a bit more enjoyable experience as you're preparing a review of the preprint that you're reading for journal club. Okay, so yes, so here's the links to resources that I promised. And the slides are here on Zenodo, so I'll leave this up for a moment so you can go get a copy of the slides if you want, so that you can get all of those links and so on. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Katie, for your inputs. And it was nice to see an overview of the different initiatives that work towards this kind of wall, because we sometimes in our fields we are aware of some of these, but not of all of them. Certainly was my case. And yeah, well, we'll see if there's any questions from the chat. And in the meantime, I will want to address some of the things that one of my questions, which is that in the part where you mentioned the problems or that, for example, the overwhelm of the traditional peer review system.
Hmm.
Um, you mentioned one of the things that it was maybe review less. And yeah, we have some colleagues here in the UAA that are vocal about open science that also have this kind of no, we need less review, but there's also the other part of no, we need the peer review is the main heart of the scientific process, and we need to do more review. But yeah, there's a lot of problems with that, as you mentioned. There's uh, it is overwhelming. There's so much stuff that's being published that it's unfeasible to have it all reviewed in the best way. And in my opinion, uh, this is like a product of the very system that we have. It's a systemic thing because this incentives that we have is that we the famous phrase publish or perish. You
Hmm.
need to publish, but we do not need to review. Reviewing is not part of the incentives that we need to be promoted or so one of the main things that we could do apart from the things that you mentioned is maybe trying to also articulate these initiatives with the reform for research assessment. So trying
Hmm.
to change the incentives that we give to researchers so that publishing your reviews make being part of the review process is also as you mentioned, like you said, peer reviews are scholarship, but as it is right now, they are not counted as part
Yeah.
of the research assessment. There's no metric for to doing this because we do not have like uh, a standard publication way of publishing our
Hmm.
contributions to reviews. So that's one part that we need to also push forward in this
Yeah, yeah. Can I just say I completely agree with that, and I think sort of figuring out how to recognize and reward reviews is one piece of the puzzle, but I think an even bigger piece of the puzzle is really getting people culturally to sort of internalize that reviews are scholarship, that the work does not, like that science or research does not progress without that sort of critical back and forth, right? Like it requires, if I'm just out here publishing by myself, okay, great, but it's that dialogue, the interaction between researchers that actually produces advances. And so we don't need to do that necessarily within the confines of journals, but we do need to figure out ways to make it easier for people to provide that kind of feedback and also for the value of that contribution to be recognized. Like I can certainly think of instances where critique, feedback, review, these sorts of activities have a lot more value than the original scholarship that someone, might be trying to do. And this is, it's maybe that sounds mean or harsh or something like that. It's not a knock on the original research, right? Everyone, of course, thinks they're doing the most important original research, but we need both pieces. And when one is undervalued, you get this overproduction of the original research without the sort of check and balance that you need to really, advance things and move them forward. So yeah, that I mean, we organizationally are trying to work in collaboration with the research assessment reform initiatives, so like DORA and CORA and these other initiatives. We're certainly on board with that idea, and I think it's not quite as simple as just simply saying we need to change the incentive structure or we need to change the publishing system. It's actually that both of these movements need to work together because otherwise you're not going to be able to have progress or success with either movement.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we invite the attendees to also post their questions on the chat or raise their hand if they want to talk. Yeah. Hala, please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for the nice presentation. It is clear, very clear. I have a question regarding scholars at risk. You know, I'm from Sudan. I used to do my research there in Sudan, and I had paper draft, and then the war started in Sudan. I just fled out to Kenya, for example. So, um, how can I go forward and just complete reviewing my draft paper and publish it because um, I'm stuck in that. I'm stuck in that. I used to have the assistance or the help of my research institute in Sudan, but now the place is destroyed. So uh, how can how can how can I go through this? Yani? This is my question. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, let me just say that sounds extremely challenging and wow, what a stressful situation. And yeah, I mean, for in general, like I said, this open system provides some advantages over the traditional system in that to publish research on a preprint server doesn't require, institutional backing or support from an institution. So to the extent that you have, a paper that's sort of ready to share or, complete in some way, can be posted on a preprint server and then it is in a certain sense published. You could then, of course, take it to a journal if you like after that, but it is already available. It's public. It's, part of the scholarly record. To invite reviews on it, probably the easiest way to do that is to use the pre-review request a review service. I do know that they're getting, I think, more requests than they have reviewers. So people are asking for their papers to be reviewed, but there's not necessarily a large enough community there within your particular area to give feedback on the work. Um, Social media can be really helpful for anyone that is sort of working in isolation in some way, who's, disconnected from other communities, to be able to connect to other scholars that are sort of in a similar situation or, working in a similar area. Um, yeah, I guess that would be kind of my main advice. I don't know if there are others on the call that have more advice for that particular situation.
Okay, that's really relieving. It helps. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
There's also a question in the chat, although I'm not sure it's completely relevant to the topic, but
Okay,
we can give
we'll give it a
some
shot.
tips. Yeah, it says it's from Najib. He says, "Hello everyone. Thank you for those who are just graduate. Thank you for all, and then for those which just graduated and finished their PhD in Germany and looking for a chance or mentor networking and others who have experience. He, I think he's asking for help to go forward and just tips and motivation. And
Yeah,
sometimes it can be overwhelming, like you're just going into your PhD career and or your research career, and then you're faced with all of the problems with the community, and it sometimes can be demotivating. So if all of this is it's a problem, then I do not want to participate in it, but we need to participate in because that's the system that we have right now, and
hmm
maybe we can engage in some of the initiatives to try to change how things are.
Yeah, so let me, I'm just trying to pull up a website. I mentioned this out loud, but I guess it's worth a little bit more explanation. So there's many communities besides this. This is just the one that I know of that is sort of like the best developed globally for focusing on open science related issues. Um, so the started in the UK, there's a UK reproducibility network, but then there are a global federation of other reproducibility networks, and you can see down below that they're listed here. Certainly not every country in the world is represented, but many are across different regions. And so getting involved with sort of your local variant of this is one sort of easy way to connect with others who are local to you, or at least somewhat local to you at a national level, who are interested in these kinds of activities, because I do think it's fairly easy to feel pretty powerless as an individual in terms of what you can do to help support these changes towards a more open way of working. But working with others in these communities, I think, is for me at least, it's been the most kind of empowering or the best way to get connected and not feel quite like you're working so alone on an island. I don't know if that answers the question really at all, but it's a way that would be my advice in general, is sort of reaching out to networks like this that that can help you get connected to others in a community that is relevant to you.
Yeah, and sort of in the same spirit of having different networks, we at the GYA also have like a network of global of national academies. So we do not have a national academy for science, young academy for science, national young academy for science in every country yet as of now, but we do have a big network of national academies. So if you want to check our website, there's also uh, a section for young academies, and there's also you can contact someone that's in your region, like because yeah, on for example on this for the UK, I don't see one for example for Mexico specifically, but there's one for Spain, which they speak Spanish, so we can we can reach out and maybe do some collaboration, try to set up something in our region. So yeah, it for a lot of these things, we need to involve ourselves because as researchers, we are sometimes again overwhelmed with all the things, and then we need to participate in or contribute to be able to survive within the academic system. So sometimes, even though we have a lot of, I have colleagues that have a lot of drive and interest in helping, but they really do not have the time to dedicate to all of these things. So if
Yep,
any of us have any like can dedicate a bit of our free time to helping these kind of initiatives, it is very much welcome and needed.
agreed
Uh,
completely.
yeah. And I think that with that we're gonna finish our first Fridays Open Science for first Fridays here at the GYA. And we thank you, Dr. Katie Corker, for your all your inputs and your your tips and your explanations for this topic. And we look forward um to keep in touch and promoting more of these for these topics.
Thank you, Oscar. Have a great day, everyone. Happy Friday.
Yeah, you too. And I will send you some connection requests to keep in contact and maybe discuss more in the future because I'm very much interested in this kind of discussions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd be glad to.
Okay, well, with that, thank you everyone, and we'll see each other next month, this first Friday here at the GWA.
Bye.
Bye.